In this video, we'll go over a few points to help you put together a professional resume that can help you secure a paid internship in a technical field next summer. It's assumed that you've already been exposed to resume basics. That is, generally speaking, what information should be included in a resume. Let's begin with some general guidelines. First, make sure that there are no spelling mistakes in your resume. If you're using Microsoft Word or open source equivalent software, then misspelled words should be marked. Go through your resume carefully to find spelling mistakes. Ask a family member or friend to take a look also, especially to make sure that you don't have any other typos or grammatical errors. Otherwise, what you're communicating to your prospective employer is that you are not careful with details, which is an impression you don't want to make. Sometimes a blank page will appear at the end of a resume. You didn't want it there, but there it is somehow. Now, if you're printing out your resume to hand deliver, or if you're sending it through the postal system, it doesn't matter if there's a blank page at the end because you can just remove it before you send it. However, a lot of employers are now asking that resumes be uploaded to their websites. If you upload a resume with a final blank page, you're signaling to the employer that you don't know all the ins and outs of Microsoft Word or whatever software you used. That is okay because no one knows all the features of a given software package. However, the other thing you're communicating to the employer is that you didn't make the effort to figure out how to remove that final blank page, or that you didn't seek assistance in figuring out how to remove it. Again, you're telling the employer something negative, that you don't take care of details and that you don't completely finish tasks. Don't include acronyms in your resume unless they are very widely used. For example, avoid using FFA because most people outside rural areas are not very familiar with Future Farmers of America. Similarly, NHS or National Honor Society is very important during high school years, but employers may or may not know or remember what it stands for. Don't use slang or shortened forms anywhere in your resume like intro instead of introduction, or etc. period for etc. Provide information using bulleted lists. Don't write in paragraphs. That's not the best way to convey information in a resume. Use phrases instead. Don't use first-person narrative, meaning don't use sentences with I or we in them. For example, don't say, I ran errands and operated power tools. You could say that during an interview, but that's not how you want to express this in the resume. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to instead write, was responsible for running company errands, and experience with various power tools. That conveys the information in resume style. The first part of the resume is the header. Your full name should appear in the header, that is, at the top of all resume pages. It should be in a large font on the first page. If there are additional pages in your resume, your name should appear at the top of the page on every page, but it should be in a smaller font on subsequent pages. That's in case the resume is printed out and the pages get separated from one another. Your full address should appear in the header. As a student, it'd be okay for you to list a school address as well as your home address. You should also include your email and personal cell phone number. Obviously, the city and state of your address should be included, but this holds true for any place you mention later in the resume as well. The next section of the resume is for education. It's included here because for this type of resume, your education is more important than your experience. Remember, the purpose of this resume is to help you get a technical internship. What you're communicating to a prospective employer is that you're interested in getting a summer internship that will complement your technical studies. So what you want to emphasize here is that you're enrolled in a bachelor's degree program that is preparing you to work at tasks that involve not only a broad undergraduate education that forms you as a person, but also that involve the acquisition of quantitative and technical habits of mind. We want to use reverse chronological order here. So first you should include your current enrollment at the University of Mary along with what you're majoring in and your expected date of graduation. Like this. This is a good way to do it rather than saying freshman at the University of Mary or sophomore at the University of Mary, because you won't have to update this portion of the resume as frequently. And yet it still gives an idea of how far along you are in your degree program. Now, if you aren't sure of what you want to major in, you can just put engineering or something that's approximately correct, and it's okay to change it later. If you have any honors or scholarships that you've received from UMary, this would be the place to put them. And then you can mention coursework that you're doing, specifically technical coursework. That would be math, science, or technically related courses, engineering courses, computer science courses, things like that. A good way to do this would be to write something like enrolled in university-level chemistry and mathematics courses. What you don't want to write is something like enrolled in COM 110, oral communication, because course codes and even course titles typically don't mean much to anyone who's not extremely familiar with University of Mary's course offerings. All right, so that's the University of Mary information. Now, if you have already earned a degree at another institution, such as a bachelor's or associate degree, you can list it right after that, along with the name of the university or college that awarded it and the month and year you received it. Next should come information about your high school. Include that you received a diploma and the year and month, and also, of course, the location of the high school. If you received a GED instead, just put General Education Development Test, awarded, or earned, okay, or passed, something like that, and the month and date that you received it, along with the city and state in which you earned it. You can include honors and scholarships you were awarded while you attended high school. For example, if you were a valedictorian of your class, this would be a good place to put it. Or if you were a National Merit Commended Scholar, you could put that here too. If you did college-level coursework during high school, you can mention it here by writing something like college-level coursework or advanced coursework in, say, mathematics or humanities or physics, something like that, that would be relevant information that shows that you did advanced work at the high school level. That's impressive. It would be impressive to a prospective employer. In general, it's better not to mention ACT or SAT scores on this kind of resume, even if you did very well. They helped show college admissions teams that you were ready to enroll in college, but now that you are enrolled in college, you don't need to refer to them anymore. The next section of the resume is the experience section. You may not have a lot of work experience. That's okay. It's also appropriate to include volunteer work in this section. You should start with your most recent work experience and go backwards from there. You don't have to be extremely precise here as far as when you did this kind of work, but you should include approximate dates. For example, if you had a summer job working doing, say, landscaping in the summer of 2019, you can just write the name of the job and then the time period as summer 2019. That would be a fine way to describe the time that you held the job. You should always include the name of the company or organization you work for along with the location. Under each item, you can briefly include job responsibilities that show your capabilities. For example, say you had a job where you had to work in stressful situations. Okay, you can include that information by saying, duties included working in a fast-paced, quickly changing atmosphere. Okay, that's a way to say it tactfully. Now, you could also have been in a service job where you had to deal with difficult people. Maybe they were coworkers, maybe they were customers. Okay, one way of describing that is you can say that you're an excellent team player or you had excellent customer service skills. These are tactful ways to say these things. Now you can talk about other things that you've done in the activities or achievement section. Here's where you can talk about your high school extracurricular activities, including sports, drama, band, or church activities such as helping with Vacation Bible School or being an altar server. In a few years, you probably won't include high school activities anymore on your resume because your more recent experiences will be more relevant. If you're currently playing a sport at UMary, or if you're involved in, say, music department activities, you can mention that here. Don't worry if you don't have any college extracurriculars to talk about. Employers understand that you're in a very demanding major, so you may not have time to get involved, and that's okay. Okay. If you received honors associated with any of these activities, you can include them here, but if what the award is about isn't obvious, you should briefly describe it. How you were chosen, for example, did you apply? Were you nominated? How competitive is the award? Things like that, okay? Don't assume that someone reading your resume is going to be familiar with the award or the activity that you participated in. If, for example, you state that you were selected as Coyote of the Month, that's not going to convey much information to the typical reader. Lastly, let's look at the skills section. First of all, this is not the same as the experience section. What you want to highlight here are the relevant skills an employer would like to see in a technical intern. You want to state your strengths without sounding like you're bragging. If you're good with people, you can write excellent interpersonal skills. If you're good at explaining things verbally and in writing, you can write strong in oral and written communication. Something like that. These are all very important for technical positions because you're generally working with other people on projects that are complex and hard to understand. You need to be able to communicate with and relate to other people on the team. It's team-based work. And then you may also be asked to interact with clients or vendors, as is appropriate. You should include technical skills that you've acquired, such as any software packages or operating systems that you know about. If you know how to weld, or you have some other trades type skill, or if you're familiar with computer-aided design or CAD, this would be a good place to list it. So if you know a lot about the skill that you're including, you can definitely list it as proficient in, and then say what it is, okay? Or proficient at, depending on what it is. If you don't know very much, you could say familiar with. You're not committing and claiming to be an expert when you do something like that. But these are ways that you can phrase this information and convey it in a succinct manner to a prospective employer. I hope you will find these tips helpful, and I look forward to seeing your technical resume.